Ousted television hosts, former Fox News host Tucker Carlson and former CNN anchor Don Lemon are reportedly texting each other, according to Brian Stelter via Vanity Fair. While the content of the messages remains unknown, Mother Jones says the two have exchanged many texts in the past couple of days.
Fox News' Howard Kurtz had this to say about these two recent exchanges at Fox and CNN.
Now, the big picture raised by the dismissals at Fox and CNN is whether we are entering a new era in which some limits are imposed on what even the most popular hosts can say. Management at all the networks may be more likely to rein in their top talent and insist on fact-checking rather than risk embarrassment or lawsuits for the airing of false information. That, if it comes to pass, might just be a worthwhile outcome.
So it was reported that they have retained the same attorney, a famous media attorney, to help negotiate those exits. This is the same attorney Megyn Kelly has. I certainly believe that they were texting. And according to Brian Stelter, by the way, this was fascinating. They criticize each other on their shows all the time. Yeah. They've never met. They've never corresponded. But because this happened on the same day, they have, and I fully believe that they're communicating. Tucker is a very kind of prolific emailer, texter. Sort of, he stays in contact with lots of people. Based on my knowledge of him and what other people have to say about him, he's often, while he's very combative publicly with the media, and I'm not saying he's combative privately as well, but he's often in contact with people, even if he's very publicly combative with them. So I would have no difficulty believing that they're talking. What are your thoughts on this whole development at Fox and CNN? Is it as Howie says that we're entering a new era?
I don't know about that. It does capture my imagination, just picturing Don Lemon and Tucker Carlson in their respective beds at night, just smiling at their phones, talking to each other. Imagine the lawyer that they share saying, you know, you had a long day. I know a guy who's going through something similar. Yeah. Or maybe Don Lemon just liked a few of Tucker's old Instagram photos and then he knew it was safe to take the step. No, but I think really what it is, it's two separate things that happened on the same day. Is it coincidence? I'm not sure. I think Rupert Murdoch and his shareholders and his board likely weren't happy about a $780 million settlement. Tucker became an expensive liability, and I think that was their chief concern. Don Lemon has slipped up on the network a bunch recently, and I think the way he's acted, where he's going against the grain from what it seems Fox wants him to be doing, or from what CNN wanted him to be doing, right? Going after guests, not having his co-host speak, slipping up and saying Nikki Haley's not in her prime, getting caught on a hot mic, saying that Jon Stewart gets away with a lot with his comedy when he's criticizing the Defense Department not passing audits. I think Don Lemon was just a bit sloppy, which is something entirely different from Tucker being a $787 million liability.
Yeah, my guess is that they were already going to exit Don Lemon and thought that this was a good time to do it because there was a bigger firing that had just taken place. There are so many things that we talked about them a lot on the show last week, but there's so much going into what was happening with Tucker. There was the lawsuit, although, you know, he eventually on his show did kind of dress down Sidney Powell. If you were looking for a Fox-related person who was really pushing those guests, he wasn't really at the top of that list. I do think the lawsuit may have revealed correspondence that he had just about the bosses that was saying unkind things about them that wouldn't have been revealed except for the lawsuit. So it's almost like indirectly it's the lawsuit. I think that bothered people. It will be interesting to see if there's a tighter leash, as Howard Kurtz was suggesting. And a lot of people in independent media, even left media, have said maybe that's not a good thing because, you know, Tucker, and I'm sure there's lots of things you disagree with him on. There's even things I disagree with him on, to tell the truth of it. But one thing where he really departed from the orthodoxy, what used to be the orthodoxy on the right in a really healthy way, was foreign policy. And that, you know, someone joked that on any given night, he could have the most far-right show on television and also the most far-left show on television, because he would say things about, for instance, Ukraine, that now is becoming kind of the Republican bottom line on foreign policy, but he helped push it in that direction.
Yeah, I mean, my main beef with Tucker has always been he makes a case with many sound premises and ridiculous conclusions all of the time. A lot of his criticisms of the establishment, his populist message, is sometimes words in the right order that I agree with, but then to go on and make the case for privatization of public goods and not regulating corporations and convincing people that this would be in their self-interest, that actually this will make the things that you need to get by more affordable and easier for you to get, and it'll make your job pay you more somehow. That's my beef with Tucker, but I think he did push the needle for a lot of people towards populism. I just wonder if what he muddied the water with is going to influence people's brains and make it so that they're permanently poisoned by this Tucker Carlson
Yeah, I mean,
mindset. Some
some of the stuff you're mentioning that's kind of standard issue conservative stuff. That's the part of it I agree with, but some of the other stuff I don't agree with. It'll be interesting to see, obviously, what they, if he's replaced with someone who does just as well, but is probably unlikely, I think, to have that exact eclectic mix of views with honestly, they'll probably have someone who's a little bit more of a traditional conservative, at least on economic stuff. Yeah. I don't know on foreign policy. The consensus has so changed on the right in like against neoconservatism and against interventionism that I don't know if you'd have someone who's probably not someone who has as much of a commitment to it as Tucker, but we'll have to see. And then, of course, there's what does Tucker himself do other than like hang out with Don Lemon, I guess. Probably they're not hanging out, probably, but
right, yeah, FaceTiming at night,
sure.
Having their own show that they're planning together, which would never happen in a million years. I do think it's
the
interesting.
new Crossfire.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I would watch that actually.
I would totally watch it. Yeah.
It would be so interesting to see if it is the case that mainstream media is in lockstep and they're saying we need to rein in our hosts that are saying things that are not super aligned with what we'd like them to say, and how much that leads to people getting more of their news from streaming, which is already a trend. Like, how soon are we from Fox, CNN, MSNBC from becoming increasingly irrelevant? Like, they're worried about ratings, who's watching their channel versus every other channel. They should be concerned with who's getting their news on YouTube, on TikTok, on the Hill, right?
Right, yeah.
Other places.
This is some self-promotion, which we're all about here. I mean, it's not quite that case because they still get, you can have a Fox, CNN, et cetera. They're getting whatever ratings they're getting, but then their clips are put on YouTube and they get, they get tons of views that way. But I'm generally not like more in favor of reining people in. Like, that's not what audiences want. You're like, coherent ideologies are breaking down and something new and interesting is coming about, which we try to model on this show and shows like Where You Come From and all that kind of stuff. So the future obviously is going to be different. It's like, how rapidly does it happen? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm also anti-reining it in, which should be obvious.
We're not reining it in. More Rising right after this.